He thought he'd won. He stood there, hand in hand with his new model wife, flaunting her beauty and wealth like a trophy. Until the doors opened, and his ex-wife walked in, glowing, graceful, and pregnant. And the man standing proudly beside her. The billionaire jet owner who once said he didn't believe in love, until she changed everything. By the end of the night, the man who broke her heart would finally understand what real loss feels like. The grand ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and laughter. Every corner smelled of roses and champagne. Cameras flashed, guests whispered, it was the wedding of the year. Daniel Reed, a powerful entrepreneur, was marrying Victoria Lane, an international model known for her beauty and arrogance. The couple stood center stage, flawless and proud. But among the crowd, one name was being murmured, Emma Collins, Daniel's ex-wife. 2 years ago, Emma had walked away from this very man with nothing but her dignity. She had loved him deeply, but his obsession with success, status, and appearances had turned their marriage into a business deal. He'd humiliated her for not being enough, not glamorous enough, not rich enough, not the woman he could show off. When she found out he was cheating with Victoria, she had left quietly, no fights, no revenge. Just silence. Everyone thought she'd vanished. Until tonight. Daniel was in the middle of his speech when the double doors at the back of the hall opened. The chatter died instantly. Emma walked in. She wasn't the same woman who once cried in the rain outside his office. Her hair was elegant, her dress simple yet breathtaking, her posture regal. And beside her walked Alexander Grant, the reclusive billionaire jet owner, the man known for buying entire airlines and vanishing to private islands. But what shocked everyone most wasn't the man beside her, it was her. She was visibly pregnant. Daniel froze mid-sentence, his hand tightening around the mic. The crowd turned to whispers. Emma's eyes met his, calm and unreadable. She gave a soft smile, as if greeting an old memory. Alexander placed his hand gently on her back, protective yet respectful. Daniel's chest burned with confusion, jealousy, and disbelief. When the ceremony ended, Victoria clung to his arm, whispering, "Is that your ex?" He didn't answer. His eyes never left Emma. Later that night, as the guests gathered for dinner, Daniel approached her. "You shouldn't have come," he said coldly. Emma turned, her voice soft but strong. "I was invited." "By who?" "By the groom's mother," she said with a faint smile. "Apparently, she still thinks I was the best thing that ever happened to you." His jaw tightened. "And him?" he asked, glancing at Alexander. Emma looked toward the billionaire, who was charming a group of investors with ease. "He's the best thing that ever happened to me." For the first time, Daniel felt something he hadn't in years, small. He remembered the night Emma left. She had begged him not to destroy what they had. She'd told him she didn't care about money, only love. And he'd laughed in her face, saying, "Love doesn't pay bills." Now, watching her radiant and calm beside one of the richest men in the country, he realized how wrong he'd been. The night grew colder, and the whispers grew louder. Guests were torn between gossip and awe. Emma, once the heartbroken ex-wife, now stood as the woman every other envied. At dinner, Alexander raised his glass and said, "To strong women, who know their worth, even when others don't." The crowd clapped. Daniel didn't. After dinner, he found Emma on the terrace, staring out at the city lights. "Why are you really here?" he asked, voice trembling between anger and regret. She didn't turn. "Because I was tired of hiding. Because I wanted to show myself that I'm not defined by who left me, but by who I became after." He swallowed hard. "You look happy." She turned then, meeting his eyes. "I am." "Is it real?" "With him." She smiled softly. "Very real. He treats me like I matter, not like an accessory. When I told him I was pregnant, he didn't ask whose it was. He just said, 'Then we'll build a bigger home.'" Daniel's throat tightened. "So, it's mine." Her silence said enough. He took a shaky breath. "I didn't know, Emma." "That's because you never cared to look," she said, voice trembling. "You were too busy proving to the world you'd upgraded." Tears burned her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. "You wanted perfection. I wanted peace. And somehow, I found it, without you." He stepped closer. "Emma, But before he could finish, Alexander walked out, wrapping a warm shawl around Emma's shoulders. "Cold out here," he said gently, glancing at Daniel. "Everything all right?" "Yes," she said, turning toward Alexander, smiling. "Everything's perfect now." Daniel watched as Alexander kissed her forehead and guided her back inside, his hand protectively resting on her growing belly. In that moment, Daniel realized he'd lost her long before she ever walked away. The wedding ended, but for Daniel, it was just the beginning of regret. Months later, photos of Emma and Alexander filled magazines, the billionaire jet owner announcing a charity foundation in her name. The Collins Foundation, empowering single mothers to start again. When a journalist asked Alexander why he named it after her, he smiled and said, "Because she taught me that strength isn't in money or power, it's in forgiveness, grace, and love that asks for nothing in return." Daniel watched the interview alone, in the mansion he once bragged about. Victoria had already left him, chasing newer headlines and richer men. And for the first time, he cried. Not because he lost her, but because he finally realized what he'd thrown away when he thought he was winning.